What's going on, guys? Welcome to the new channel. My name is Emish. Today's video is going to be some snippets and clips taken from a recent live stream that I was invited on, hosted by Senpaishome. We talked about various things, mainly about Ron Toye's recent deposition, part one of his deposition hosted on Nick Recada's live stream as of the last few days. Some of the things regarding Vic Mignogna's recent depositions as well that was posted on Twitter by X amount of people. Don't really want to name names because I really don't care about that shit. But I figured what I would do was is whenever I'm hosted on or whenever I'm featured on some other YouTubers' live streams, I would actually record the live streams myself because they have a habit of not uploading them because of YouTube algorithms, so on and so forth. And I would take clips of that, of things that I covered specifically on those live streams, and upload them as content on this specific channel. I don't really know how often I'm going to be uploading, but it is good to be back. Hopefully you guys like the setup, and for future reference, if there's ever anything that you guys want me to talk about specifically, please let me know in the comment section or hit me up on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter as well at emisheslive. I will talk to you guys soon. Let's jump right into it. There's no face cam for this one specifically other than this intro, so sorry about that, but hopefully in the future I will incorporate. Once I upload my own content, you will see a lot more of my side face, if anything. So let's jump right into it. Thank you again to Senpaishome for hosting me or featuring me on his live stream, and I hope to be a part of many more live streams in the near future. So without any further ado, let's jump right into it. Take care. He can't remember his Twitter handle. Doesn't know what assault is. He just got a new job. Allegedly got fired from the other one, probably for all this drama that's been happening. Using company money. Speaking on behalf of a company he doesn't have authority over to sponsor a convention, insinuating that an investigation would be taking place, then going on to say that he doesn't have information regarding the investigation. All he knows is that Monica told him that there would be investigations regarding Vic Mignogna, so on and so forth. So, I mean, there's really nothing else that we've seen or heard. There's nothing new in that deposition. It was trash. So, the only thing that we learned about Ron specifically, and this lawsuit so far, is that they've got nothing. And it's as Michael said earlier in regarding to he's just taking his lawyer's advice, but simply saying you don't remember is kind of lying too. You know, you're not necessarily telling the truth either when you say you don't remember. So it's a lot easier for you to just say, yeah, I did tweet that, because you admitted the tweets are in front of you. There's a binder, there's a whole stack full of tweets in front of you. So it would have been much, and that's the beauty of Ty's strategy here. So the guy remembers all these other stories, remembers that he spoke to Sabbath, remembers that he spoke to Ian and company, or whoever else he spoke to, Marchie and all these other people, doesn't remember the context. So when he's asked if he remembers if anything positive was said, I don't remember. Well, that also means no, right? It doesn't mean yes, it also means no. So he should have just said no, nothing positive was said. You know, it just would have been so much better. But it's on advice of counsel in an attempt to stall things and just burn through resources. And the new focus is going to be Monica for sure. And I think if they had any kind of a strategy, Monica should have probably considered, or put some thought into just having Ron answer, for the most part, at least be genuine in his answers, because he has nothing to really do with this. He wasn't a part of the investigation. All he did was he's just the guy who was just trying to fit in at the cool kids table. Right? He's just Monica's fiance. Like, he has no input in Funimation's actual alleged investigation, so on and so forth. So he's not really a key player. He's fodder. That's why Monica's deposition is going to be a lot bigger than this. I mean, this is just entertainment. We're just laughing at the guy. Mm-hmm. Literally everything they're asking Vic has nothing to do with the people accusing him of sexual assault. All of the questions that they were asking him, they were trying to paint this narrative that he's some kind of, predator towards underage women. And the two don't correlate with one another, right? You can't, none of this proves, even if you somehow manage to get the court to believe, or a jury to believe on trial, that, yeah, he's kind of creepy and he could be a potential, pedophile. Let's just theoretically say that. It doesn't prove that he sexually assaulted Marchie, Monica Rial and company, which is their premise. And which is the whole idea for Funimation letting them go to begin with. And that's something I think you guys really need to understand about this, is that simply insinuating or trying to paint this idea that he's a pedophile doesn't prove that he sexually assaulted the people that he lost his job for. Two totally separate things, so they're wasting time. And it's a lull and a half, if anything.
And also I noticed when they went over the deposition and the legal papers and stuff, they danced around and skipped over a lot of stuff. Look, I'm gonna flat out say it so they can quit avoiding it. Vic Mignogna lied about the GoFundMe stuff. We showed it on the League cast last night. The League of Darkness League cast. We showed it last night. We went through it step by step. We showed how many times he lied about it. Okay? Now that don't mean he's lying about the rest of the stuff, but that means that he is capable of lying.
Okay, so regarding that, what's that about, MS?
And it's kind of weird because we know that the GoFundMe was started to help fund legal fees for Vic, specifically to help him take on these multiple targets, right? But then like the deposition kind of mentions a few things where it's just like, well, he never met Nick, but in his statement he says a friend of mine expressed his wanting to start a GoFundMe to fund blah blah blah, and right. while I'm deeply, I appreciate the support, so on and so forth, and portions of it will go to for a charitable cause, so on and so forth. So there's kind of, and it really, obvious. Let's look at it from this scenario. Someone starts up a GoFundMe for me, right? I don't know who the person is, and I have one brief interaction with them. I put out a statement. I'm gonna automatically claim for them to be a friend of mine, especially if they're not getting a cent from that GoFundMe specifically. Right, because, well, they immediately become a friend, not a close friend, not a personal friend, but they become someone you can consider a friend in the context of how you would tell your parents as a kid, like, hey, can I go to my friend's house even though there's somebody you just met last week at school? You know what I'm saying? So it's in that context, right? And that's where you kind of have to, like, you start nitpicking a little bit. And, of course, he's capable of lying. Nobody insane with that. He wouldn't lie about anything. Why not? He's being deposed against people that spent the entirety of the deposition trying to paint him out to be a pedophile, which has nothing to do with the sexual assault allegations put forth on him anyway. Why not talk about that, NBA, right? So this is where you kind of draw two different, there's a little bit of a bias on one side where it's like, well, his argument is that we're not talking about the bad things that he said in the deposition. Okay, well, for sake of argument, I'm a father, right? I have one kid, a son, right? But generally, growing up, I've always told myself if I ever had a daughter, I'd have to I'd have to walk around with a shotgun. I don't condone any man just randomly kissing my daughter or on the forehead or on the cheek. And it's not for me to like spite Vic personally. It's just my upbringing and how I would choose to raise my children. Be real here. Vic is not running around kissing everybody down the hall. He's like, he's not doing that. That's not happening. Let's be realistic here. And these people are waiting in line for 3, 4, 5 hours just to meet him. And it's, if anything, I would argue it's part of his marketing routine to where it gets people to come back down the road, which is why he's developed such a loyal fan base. Now, I think the question is whether or not it's morally acceptable to allow these kids or not to allow these kids, but whether or not kids ask for a kiss or a hug, whether or not Vic should be doing it. Well, he's done it for what, 15 years? Right? There's been, and people have done, and naturally people have disagreed. There's some people who disagreed with it, but the general public seems to be okay with it, especially if they travel from state to state, from country to state, to come see him. Some people think that kissing nowadays is considered to be a sexual act, like Vic is doing it with the intent of being sexual to kids, right? I'm saying that the general public, over the course of 15, arguably 20 years, found it to be okay, with a handful of people simply disagreeing with it and not being okay with that behavior, right? But that behavior wasn't the focus, or wasn't the focal point of them disliking Vic. The focal point of them disliking Vic was nowadays people accusing him of sexual assault. Completely different thing.
Right.
And the two don't correlate to one another. So that's the point there. And then, when you look at it from that perspective, you end up realizing, well, gee, it's just a simple disagreement in terms of like cultural upbringing and so on and so forth. But the general public seems to be okay with it in the sense where they fly out to come see him. They wait in line 3, 4, 5 hours when they could be touring the rest of the convention. They'd rather see him specifically, and and part of his shtick is being extra nice and kind to the fandom. But he's not. His fandom doesn't consist of just strictly girls, right? Let's be real here. The people who are accusing him of sexual assault are grown women, and were grown women at the time. And then you have a bunch of randoms implying that, well, he's a pedophile. Where'd that come from? He's not running around, raping 25, 30-year-olds, and then suddenly, but he's really into kids secretly. You know, so it's there's a little bit of an inconsistency here, and the stories are based on stories that they've heard from within conventions, which kind of makes sense as to why Monica and company are the ones being targeted, right? So when you put two and two together, you start to realize that, well, okay, he's just simply disliked. You can argue whether it's jealousy, you can argue whether it's, you know, and if you've seen Vic operate at conventions, you could see a clear difference into his performance, into how people interact with him versus how other voice actors interact with Vic. You know, he doesn't take breaks. This guy just sits there for hours, like well past convention hours, right? And he does that as to where the other other voice actors that sit in the green room, and more power to them. You know, they don't have to sit there without breaks. They have every right to take a break. But Vic just chooses to give extra, and because he gives extra, he's looked at as, well, why is he doing all this? Like, does he secretly like these kids? I think he likes these kids a little bit too much, right? You know, like, over the course of years, that's kind of like the narrative that gets painted about him. And there's no definitive way to really say, well, it's true or false, but you go with the latter and you say, well, okay, there's really not much foundational support to really say, well, yeah, he's a pedophile, let alone that he's guilty of committing these, you know, acts of sexual assault and misconduct. So, yeah. You know, part of their position is to be disingenuous, right? That's what they get paid for, is to be disingenuous in court and in front of a judge, and to blatantly just lie and do their best to defend someone. I mean, you could defend anybody from anything. It's just what matters is how well you're able to do it. So it's like, yeah, they take a part of the deposition, they take specific quotes, and they spin it, and they're just completely disingenuous about it, and they say, well, yeah, GG, no re, game over. And that's just not true. When you look at the rest of the deposition, you look at everything as a whole, you start to say, well, okay, the agenda here is to paint Vic out to be a pedophile, not to say that not to get him to admit that he sexually assaulted Monica and company. It's just to get him to paint him out to be a pedophile, you know, and to be a Nazi, by the way. Like, so that's interesting.